Yep. Ding ding, let's go. This is Mr. Mike. The topic at hand is, I guess, the pace. I was thinking of the word. I was going to say speed, rapidity, pace. The pace of your life. And how there's a certain pace that's imposed in society, and then there's your pace. Obviously, we could just go with the general. Does it seem like this is an immersion? This is an inquiry for you and your heart and soul and mind and all that. Does it seem that society's pace is a little too fast for you? Feel into that. Check with the resonance, the coherence, the truthfulness of that, and then try the other one. Does it seem that society's pace is too slow for you? Feel into that. And you could come to terms with the ideas that, well, in some senses, the status quo, the average, is too fast, and then in other senses, it's too slow. Interesting. But the main sort of immersion that we're doing here is self-observation, self-inquiry. What's going on as it's happening? The stimuli, the events, because I'm reflecting on the past, what I would do in the past, and what I observe people doing now, which is essentially, they're not really immersed, they're not really here right now, they're not really here in the moment, and then maybe as they're drifting off to sleep, or in their dreams, or as they're waking up, or in moments of daydreaming, moments like that, is when they're processing, but it's things that at that point had happened in the past, because they weren't really present, but the subconscious was picking up on the information and saying, hey, this is real, this is going on. If you're not going to face it, if you're not going to engage with it now, I'm just going to show you what's up later, because things need to be settled, things need to be seen and heard and felt, whether in the now or in another time when those moments become the past, become memories, become reflections, facets of your subconscious that are just showing itself to you because you weren't there in the now. So yeah. But the reason this topic of pacing, observing your own pace, the self-pace, and why that's important is not only, there was a moment this morning where some workers were just doing some work, just building work, and, I greet them with a hola or a buenas, but it got to the point where this morning, the guy was trying to have a conversation with me, all in Spanish, and I was like, I was frozen for a couple seconds, and then I was in the middle. I was like, should I just say, mi español no bueno, es malo, in which case he would do his best to speak in English, but I was in the in-between point where I was like, do I say that? Or do I take all those words and just take a couple seconds to try to remember, past Spanish classes, remember the certain words and the certain whatever, junctions, conjunctions, whatever, to try to understand and then to respond in Spanish. But by, a couple more seconds had passed, and I'm just like, all right, just nuclear option. Just, he was trying to tell me that he wanted to do this type of work. And, I didn't even say sí, because, my mind was all frazzled. I didn't even say sí, like, yes, like, go for it. Because I'm pretty sure by his body language and by the words that I could understand, that he was talking about, can I do this work right here with this door open? So, just judging by the words that I did know and by his body language. But I was at the point where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to off of intuition and what I thought I understood. Again, I was so frazzled, I didn't even say sí. I just said, yep, just do a head nod. And then at that point, he's like, okay. And then he did a little bit of English. I was like, good to go, let's go. But this, in line with the concept of pacing, I've found myself, and just doing personality tests over the years and just self-observation, I'm like, my pace, my personal pace, maybe you can relate, seems to be slightly slower in some senses, and then a lot slower in other senses, compared to just the status quo, the average person in society, in conversation, whatever. I like to steep in, I like to soak in certain conversations, certain notions, certain situations. And by the time, I'm like soaking it in, I'm steeping, I'm, enjoying the depth of the moment. Other people are already moving on in conversation or in physicality or just the events in general. They're already moving on. And I've noticed that. And again, maybe you notice that within you, about you, and it's happened in certain places and spaces in the past, in the now. And it's interesting because it's easy when we don't have a solid sense of self to get in this kind of shame or guilt or feeling down about ourselves, and we're like, I guess I'm not fast enough, I guess I'm not quick enough, I guess I'm too slow, etc., etc., etc. But I'm at this point, and I feel honored to be at this point to express to you and people like you and just the community in general, to burp, no, to just say, to just be a person that knows that I have my own pace. We have our own pace. And honestly, like, there's a certain point, I waver a bit, we're human, whatever. But I'm at this point, for the most part, where I'm like, okay, I'm too slow for you in this particular situation. I'm too fast for you in this particular situation. Whatever. Like, I'm doing me. I don't need to feel bad about it. I don't need to feel guilty about it. I'm doing me. You're doing you. Life is life. Whatever. This is my pace. And, even in job scenarios, you can get to a level of soul solidity, confidence, and just inner power that you can be at the job and you're, in some senses, falling behind. Like, you're still getting work done, but in some senses, here and there, you're falling behind, or you're at the point where stuff's getting done and you're just like, the flip side is you're getting stuff done and then you're at the point where you're just bored, and you may like take it upon yourself to just like relax, just kick back a little bit, right? So just the kick back, relaxed, taking your time type of pace in general. You can have coworkers or even higher ups maybe taking offense to that. And in your head, you may not verbalize this unless you want to, but like in your head, you're at this point where you're like, whatever. Like, are you gonna fire me? And this is true confidence, where wherever you are, you don't care if you get fired or canceled or outcast or shunned, excommunicated, banished, any and all of that. To be at that level where you're like, if you, or even, to just say to the others, the externals, where you're like, if you're even getting at that point where you want to get rid of me, you're just telling me that you're not my crowd, you're not my people, you're not the vibe. Fair enough. And if you're in a job situation, you're like, I'll tolerate it, money is money, whatever. But there can also be a part of you where you're like, all right, good to know. Thank you for showing your true colors, whatever. I'm not going to stick around for much longer. I'm going to go job searching. I'm going to go friend searching. I'm going to go solo dolo. And I'm cool with it. Whatever. So, and I speak from experience, and it's cool. In the past, I've talked about clarity and expansion of self at the soul level and beyond. But I want to switch the word, because, expansion works just fine for some cases, but if I'm going to use, like, the general term, the go-to term, instead of expansion, I'm going to say depth, because it reminds me of lucid dreaming. If you've ever done lucid dreaming, you have your fun, you have your sexy time, you have your, beat downs, you have your, explosions, your destructions, your explosions, your implosions, and those are cool for a little while, but then you get to a point where you're like, what if I just sat still, stood still, and felt a sort of centeredness, and then gained depth with having a similar experience, but over quote-unquote time, because time becomes really finicky, really sus, really strange, we'll say, in the dream world. So and this plays in waking life, because at the end of the day, we really don't actually want just surface level, superficial, just one-off experiences. It's just like, yeah, money is awesome. Yeah, sex is awesome. But, relationships is a good example, good symbolism, where it's like, cool, like having one-offs, having a body count, cool. But at the same time, to develop a single relationship and to develop that depth in all of the layers of a romantic relationship, in sex, in conversation, in the things that you guys do together, the things that you guys do alone and then share with each other, the things that, because you can have a hobby, you can have an internal, you can have a craft or two or five or whatever that you hone, that you deepen over time. Whether it be an instrument, whether it be through something like any other sort of art, gardening, painting, writing, just any and all of it, dancing, driving. I think driving is art. And you know what? driving is a good general example, because with a little bit of intentionality, you can use this. You can use this right now, and you can have it benefit you for the rest of your life. If you drive, of course. I'm gonna assume most of you do, or at least know how to drive. You can have a car, don't need a car, whatever. If you drive, you can use this. You can use this for the rest of your life, where this driving, this is something that you're doing, that you've been doing for years, if not decades. And with a little bit of intentionality, every time you drive, right? You don't have to be just gung-ho, just like in your head, like, I'm doing this, I'm deepening the craft. Just a little bit of intentionality. You're saying, I've done this hundreds, thousands of times before. I'm honing this craft. I'm deepening the excellence of this craft. Right? As I say it, as I'm doing it, I'm really feeling it. So feel free to speak it out loud. Feel free to make a mantra out of it. Mantras. I put a bunch of them in actually the last book, the Epicordicon, and to be released soon. Maybe by the time you watch this, it will be released. My newer book, Psober Psychedelics. Oh yeah, plenty of mantras in there. Not to just be like spiritual and new age, like I'm Australian. I'm saying no. So, the fact that when we speak something, it has power, and if we use I statements, it has even more power, and you can really feel it. Investigate. That's all I'm saying about that, because I've gone on enough tangents. Let's get back to the topic at hand, which is pacing. Your pace. You may be wise in investigating your own pace, observing when it seems like your pace is too fast for others, too slow for others, too fast in situations, too slow in situations, and at the end of the day, to build up a core confidence, a core solidity at the heart and soul level and beyond, so that you can get to a point where you seem too fast for this, or you seem too slow for this, but it doesn't matter, because I am I, my pace is my pace. If you can get with it, awesome. If you can't, or if you don't, at least temporarily, is what it is. I'm doing me, and that's good enough. Boom. As I like to end the video with respects, much respect to you, much respect to us, surviving, living, to eventually, in heart and soul, have the vibe of living it up, because life is, if you clear away enough layers of BS, if you break enough glass caves, get clearer and clearer in your soul's vision, and knowing the truth that life is actually awesome. All of these elements, the five main elements: water, air, earth, fire, the food, the water, the drinks, the animals, the plants, the nature, the fact that gravity is keeping us here, the atmospheric pressure is on point, temperature, even though at times it's too cold, too hot, it's still on point to sustain human life. On point, on point, on point, much respect. The sun, the moon, the stars, Mother Earth, Father Sky, much respect, all of the layers that are keeping us alive, the layers within ourself, the mind, the heart and soul, the body, all of it. Much respect from the subatomic particles and beyond, every layer, every physical, non-physical layer. This is the ultimate existential playground. Get sporty, right? This is Mr. Mike. Check out my other content. Support me in some sort of way. Book me for a powwow. Buy a book or 2 or 3. Live it up. This is Mr. Mike. Catch you later.